The key didn't fit. That was the first thing that told me my world had shifted. Rain hissed through the maple branches above the porch, bouncing off the railing, soaking the flag I held tight against my chest. Daniel's flag, the one they'd folded for me 3 hours earlier at the cemetery, still smelling faintly of wet grass and gunpowder. Behind the door, music thumped low, pop radio, of all things. Then a laugh. Not a cry, not a murmur of grief, but a quick, careless laugh. I turned the key again, slowly this time, as if respect could make the lock remember me. The metal scraped and stopped. "Sam?" My voice cracked. "Samantha, open up." "It's me," the music cut. For a moment, the only sound was rain hitting the porch light, each drop sizzling on the bulb like oil on a skillet. Then footsteps, light ones, crossing the hardwood I'd sanded with my own hands. The deadbolt clicked once, twice, and the door opened 2 inches, held by the chain. Samantha's face appeared. Her eyes were rimmed red, her hair damp at the edges, mascara staining her skin like bruises she'd painted on herself. A half-empty wine glass trembled in her hand. Her mouth was tight, a perfect corporate smile repurposed as a shield. "You shouldn't be here, Ed." "I live here," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is my house." Her chin lifted just slightly, that same upward flick she used when correcting Daniel at dinner, the one that said, "I'm done pretending you have authority here." Not anymore. The door shut. The chain rattled. Another lock turned, smooth and final. I stood there, rain dripping from my coat, staring at the grain of the wood like it could answer for her. "Sam," I said softly, "don't do this tonight, please." Through the door came her muffled voice. "You've got 10 minutes before I call the cops. 10 minutes. That's all it took to erase 31 years of mortgage payments, memories, and 1 dead son. 10 minutes between being a homeowner and a trespasser." I turned away. The rain swallowed the sound of the latch sliding home. "My name's Edward Thompson, 61, retired electrical contractor out of Buffalo. The kind of man who paid cash for his tools and never missed a power bill. The kind of man who kept a receipt for every gallon of paint and a spare fuse in every drawer. That house on Parkview Lane was more than lumber. It was the one thing I'd done right. The one thing that stood when everything else in my life leaned. I wired every socket myself. My wife, Carol, sanded the maple floors until her arms ached, and the scent of varnish filled the air for weeks. We raised Daniel there. One boy, one miracle we'd stopped trying for years before he came. Carol passed in 2014. Breast cancer. Gone fast. The house became too quiet overnight. I kept it spotless, maybe too spotless. Daniel joked that it smelled like lemon cleaner and nostalgia. He was right, he became an electrician, just like me. I used to watch him pull wire through conduit, his forearms taut, the same grease under his nails I'd had at his age, and I'd think, he's better than I ever was. Then he met Samantha. She was sharp, polished, always smelling faintly of coffee and ambition. A marketing degree, a quick mouth, the kind of person who measured life in promotions and social media likes. She talked about brands and metrics the way I talked about torque and current. We didn't speak the same language, but Daniel loved her, and that was enough for me to try. When they married in 2020, they moved upstairs. "Just till we save for a place," Daniel said, arm around her shoulders. That just stretched 4 years. At first it worked. She filled the kitchen with new things, chrome toasters, a fancy espresso machine that hissed louder than the boiler. She was talkative, quick to laugh, always moving as if standing still meant failure. Then small things changed. Carol's photo moved from the mantel to a drawer. A new perfume filled the hallways, too floral, too strong. The thermostat crept up. She said she liked warmth, but the air always felt staged, like a showroom. I told myself these were little things, adjustments. That's what families did. But every night, when Daniel came home from work, she met him with a kind of exhaustion I'd never seen in Carol, a sigh that said, "I'm tired of sharing space with history." On February 10th, 2024, Daniel came home with Michael Grant, his attorney. I was in the garage polishing a drill bit when they walked in. Daniel's grin was soft but certain. "Dad," he said, "I want to fix something." "What's broken?" I asked, joking. "Ownership." He set a folder on the workbench. Michael explained, calm and methodical. Your son wants to transfer the property title back to you. No money changing hands, just security. You paid most of it anyway. He wants to make sure you're protected, Daniel grinned. If anything ever happens, I don't want you worrying about where you'll live. Don't talk like that, I said. A reflex, because fathers aren't built for those kinds of sentences. Humor me. We signed. Michael notarized. The deed read, sole owner, Edward Thompson. Recorded Erie County, NY. Daniel clapped my shoulder. Now you can stop fixing everything, old man. I didn't know that paper would become a shield I'd have to lift alone. The phone rang at 9:03 a.m. on September 12th. I was in the garage, splicing cable for a neighbor's repair job. Mr. Thompson? The voice was too calm. There's been an accident at the Elmwood job site. By the time I reached Mercy Hospital, my hands were shaking so badly I dropped the pen at the sign-in desk. Dr. Elaine Morris met me halfway down the corridor, her white coat damp from the rain I'd tracked in. It was instantaneous, she said. He didn't suffer. That line repeats in my head even now, louder than thunder, quieter than breath. Samantha sat in the waiting area, hands clasped, mascara bleeding into the tissue she gripped. She looked up and said, "He was supposed to call me. He said he'd be home early." I sat beside her because I didn't know what else to do. She cried once, a single sound, then went silent for an hour, eyes fixed on the hospital floor. When the nurse finally gave us Daniel's things, a watch, a wallet, a half-charged phone, she held them like ashes. Rain again, the kind Buffalo specializes in, sideways, miserable, personal. The church smelled of lilies and furniture polish. Samantha stood beside the casket, every hair in place, thanking people for coming, her voice the kind people use when they don't believe their own sentences. She looked strong, controlled, like grief was a job and she had the right resume. I stood with Daniel's flag folded in my hands, the weight of it too light for what it meant. When the last hymn ended, she leaned close, her breath still sweet from the wine she'd sipped to get through the morning. Her whisper sliced through the organ's echo. "You've had your turn as his father," she said. "Let me grieve as his wife," I froze. The words cut so clean I didn't bleed until later. At the graveside, the priest spoke of eternal rest, and I thought, nothing about this is eternal, except pain. That night, I drove home in silence. Streetlights passed like metronomes, each one counting down the seconds until I could collapse into a chair that still held Daniel's jacket. When I pulled into the driveway, the porch light was on. That detail mattered. Daniel always left it off when I worked late. It glowed now like a warning. The brass glint of the lock caught my eye. New. Too new. My old one had a scratch near the keyhole from years of overuse. This one gleamed like judgment. Beside the door sat 3 garbage bags, one filled with my clothes, one with framed photos, one with Carol's old Bible. Inside, her silhouette stood behind the curtain. I knocked once. "Sam, we can talk." Her reply came steady. "There's nothing to talk about. Where am I supposed to go?" "I don't know. A motel." "Your brother's. Just not here. I built this house." She hesitated. Then colder. "You built it for your family. They're gone." Daniel wouldn't. "He's not here to say otherwise." That shut me up. Rain started again. It hit my coat, the porch rail, the folded flag. I could hear her breathing on the other side of the wood, that strange space where love used to live. Then she said it, the line that branded itself into me. "You have 10 minutes before I call the cops. 10 minutes. She didn't even open the door all the way to say it. I stepped off the porch, clutching the flag. My boot splashed through the puddles like punctuation marks to a chapter I hadn't agreed to end. There's a diner on Jefferson, and Pine called Mary's 24-hour. Wired their lights back in '09. It still hums the way I wired it, steady, reliable. I sat at the counter that night, dripping water onto the tile, and the waitress refilled my mug without asking. "You okay, Ed?" she asked, voice soft as the static from the radio. "No," I said. "Buried my son yesterday. Tonight I lost my home." She didn't gasp, didn't offer platitudes. She just nodded and slid over a plate of eggs. "Eat first. Figure the rest later. I ate." The food was rubbery, the coffee burnt, but it kept my hands busy. I stayed until sunrise, watching the rain fade to drizzle, the streetlights blink out one by one. At 8:30 a.m., I called Michael. My voice shook, but my words didn't. She changed the locks. He didn't gasp or curse. He just said, "Don't go back alone. Come to my office." When I arrived, he had the file open already. He pointed to the deed copy. "You're the legal owner." "We'll fix this." He called the precinct. "Officer Lena Torres," he said after hanging up. "She'll escort us tomorrow for a civil standby. Bring ID and keep calm." "Calm's all I've got left," I told him. The next morning, cold and clear, we drove back to Parkview Lane. Officer Torres met us out front, mid-30s. Calm eyes, professional patience. "We'll keep it peaceful, Mr. Thompson." Samantha opened the door before we could knock. "What now?" she demanded. Michael lifted the folder. "Deed filed February 12, 2024. Sole owner, Edward Thompson." "That's impossible. Recorded with the county clerk," he said. "Your late husband made sure of it." Her voice trembled. "You think I'll just leave?" Officer Torres answered, firm but gentle. "Ma'am, you have 5 days to collect personal items." Samantha glared at me. "You're a cruel man." "I'm a tired man," I said. She shoved past, dragging 2 suitcases. The wheels clattered against the wood like a verdict. When the cruiser drove off, Michael turned to me. "Change the locks again." "Keep the receipts," I nodded. "Yeah, this time they'll be mine." The house exhaled. The hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the smell of burnt coffee she'd left behind. Everything was mine again. I opened the windows. Cold air cut through the rooms like disinfectant. Then I boiled water, poured it into the old mug Daniel gave me. World's okayest dad. Steam curled upward. "Tracing the shape of peace," I whispered. "We're home, kid." And for the first time in months, the words felt true. The first week after I got the house back felt like someone had handed me a ledger and a shovel at the same time. You dig and you keep receipts. You file and you breathe. That's the rhythm of this kind of grief. Practical work stitched to deeper aches. By Monday, Michael had recorded the deed in Erie County. He called early, the way good lawyers do. Steady, no drama. "Recorded 9:12 a.m., Ed," he said. "I've got certified copies going out to the assessor and the mortgage servicer. Don't field any calls without me." "I appreciate it," I told him. "If anyone from the neighborhood calls, tell them I'm fine." "You're not fine," he said. "You're coping." "That's different." He chuckled softly, then switched back to business. "Hold tight. Don't answer Samantha." I told him I'd try. After the call, I went to the garage and opened the tool chest like a man opening a medicine cabinet. Wrenches have a clarity about them. They tell you exactly what they want. They don't lie or promise closure. They just fix what's reachable. At 10 a.m., the bank's automated voice left a message about the life insurance payout. $118,400 gross. I'd heard that number before from Carla at the insurer, but hearing it alone felt like eavesdropping on my own life. The check had cleared into the estate account. Michael said we'd allocate it to mortgage payoff, a small trust for my upkeep, and the remainder toward final funeral costs. "We'll document every dollar," he'd promised. "That way no one can scream impropriety." "You think someone will?" I'd asked. "Probably," he said. "But if they do, we'll show receipts." On Tuesday, a white envelope arrived with a clean, intimidating letterhead. Wilcox and Hammond, attorneys for Samantha Wilcox, by proxy. I held the paper like it might cut. The font was polite. The message wasn't. Michael read it over my shoulder at his office. "They're threatening to review the deed on grounds of marital equity." Classic posture. They'll have to prove undue influence or lack of capacity. Neither applies. "Can they cause trouble?" I asked. The question came out smaller than I intended. "They can file," he said. Then we counter. "Truth has records, Ed. Records win. You focus on what you can control." He tapped his pen like a metronome. "We'll prepare a response." Preparation became a new kind of prayer. Michael sent me a list, copies of the deed, bank transfers showing Daniel's payments, utility bills, and signed statements from neighbors who'd seen him pay contractors. His paralegal, Janine Reed, came by to help gather everything. She smelled faintly of citrus and talked fast. the way people do when they've spent their lives inside deadlines. We spent an afternoon photocopying statements, labeling tabs, writing a chronology. Keep it factual, Janine kept saying. Dates, amounts, names. If they want feelings, they can go to a soap opera. Her matter-of-fact tone steadied me. I realized paperwork could be a kind of therapy, an order that pain couldn't rearrange. But paperwork doesn't stop gossip. People need stories. By Wednesday, the neighborhood had found its rhythm of speculation. Mrs. Calhoun left a casserole and a folded note. Prayers for everyone. The handwriting looked gentle until you noticed the underline under everyone. I put the dish in the oven, read the note twice, and set it aside. The casserole helped. The gossip didn't. At noon, Frank from the hardware store pulled into the driveway with a box of nails and his easy whistle. "Heard you're back where you belong," he said, rolling his shoulders like good news weighed something. We moved a toppled bookcase together, dust thick enough to make us sneeze. "You'll get through it," he said. "Your son did right by you." "Frank," I asked, "you ever worry how people judge things before they know facts?" He shrugged. "Town's got a machine for that. People prefer drama to truth. You keep your head. You keep receipts. People love being witnesses, even to things that don't belong to them." I learned that before the week ended, Thursday morning. While I sat sorting a binder of bank statements, a pickup backfired 2 houses down. Mrs. Patel, across the street, was outside in her cardigan. Phone already out. In small towns, a camera is just a faster version of a rumor. Later that day, a knock came at the door. Samantha's sister, Maya. She looked hesitant, standing under a gray umbrella like someone halfway between duty and regret. "Ed," she said. "I'm Maya. I wanted to say I'm sorry about Daniel." "Thank you," I said. It was the only sentence that still fit. Her gaze drifted to the binder on the table. "I saw an article," she said. "They called it an inheritance fight. That's ugly." "It's paperwork mostly," I said. "People like headlines." She hesitated. "Samantha's. She's been fragile. Mom hired a firm before I knew. I came to tell you. She didn't want that." There was guilt in her eyes, thin but sincere. "She didn't?" I asked. "No, she's angry, not malicious. There's a difference." "She locked me out the night we buried him," I said quietly. Maya looked down. "Grief makes monsters of the living. When she left, she touched the door frame like it might forgive her. That night I sat on the back stoop, the cool air curling against my collar, thinking about how families are small weather systems, storms forming from hot, invisible clouds. You never see the lightning until it's already inside you. Friday morning brought another envelope, this one a subpoena. Wilcox and Hammond scheduled a deposition for May 2nd at 10 a.m. The parchment felt heavier than paper should. I stood in the kitchen reading it twice. Every conversation I'd had since Daniel's death replayed in my head, as if preparing for cross-examination by memory itself. Michael called it a strategy session, but it felt more like boot camp. He quizzed me on dates and told me to keep answers tight. "If you don't know, say you don't know," he said. "If you remember, say you remember. Don't guess." We practiced. "Ed, what did Daniel say when he signed the deed?" "He said he wanted me to be secure." "Good. Keep it there." When we finished, Michael leaned back, satisfied. "They're fishing. Let them fish. We've got a full net." Saturday, Bobby Haynes, an old school friend, stopped by with his teenage son. He brought coffee and silence in equal measure. "You need anything?" he asked. "Just the normal stuff," I said. "Groceries, lawn, quiet." He nodded, took a long sip, then said the kind of thing that sticks. "If anyone from the neighborhood gives you grief, call me. I'll be there." It was small, public, and it mattered. Sunday morning, I was closing up tools in the garage when voices carried from the curb. A ripple of attention that didn't belong. A small group of neighbors stood near the mailbox, whispering. One woman gestured with her phone. Another man muttered something I couldn't catch. Then I saw her, Samantha, stepping out of a dark sedan, a small cardboard box in her arms. She was arguing with someone I didn't know, her voice rising and falling like wind before a storm. I wiped my hands on a rag and started toward them. Frank appeared beside me almost instinctively, his expression unreadable. Across the street, Mrs. Calhoun leaned out her window. Within minutes, a police cruiser eased down the block. Someone had called it in, just in case. "Ed," Samantha snapped when she saw me. "This is harassment." "They're following me." "People are looking because you changed the locks," I said evenly. "You did this in the middle of the night," she bristled. "You're acting like the victim." "You locked me out of my own house the night I buried my son." "Daniel wanted me here." "Daniel was gone," I said softly. "He can't say what he wants anymore." For a heartbeat, everything froze. The rain, the watching neighbors, even the hum of the cruiser engine. Then Mrs. Calhoun broke the tension with her porch voice. "We'll not have brawling on Parkview."
"Keep it civil!"
And that's when the witness showed up, a young guy with a camera, one of those YouTube creators who live streams neighborhood news. "Hey folks, live on Parkview." "We got a drama," he shouted. Phones came out. Instead of escalating, the scene shifted. Officer Torres stepped from the cruiser, calm as a morning shift. "Everyone take a breath," she said. "Mr. Thompson, are you safe?" "I am," I answered. She turned to Samantha. "If you need help moving items, we can schedule it. Let's keep this peaceful." Her professionalism wrapped the moment in order. Samantha, realizing she had an audience, stiffened. She clutched the box tighter, walked to her car, and left. The livestream camera followed her license plate until she disappeared. What the crowd recorded didn't change the law, but it changed the story. People saw who stood where. Mrs. Patel whispered to her neighbor, "He's been a good man." Small endorsements like that rebuild what court orders can't. The next morning, the Buffalo Courier printed a short piece buried on page 6. Dispute resolved by legal paperwork. It ended with a line. Neighbors described Mr. Thompson as calm and cooperative. That paragraph did more for my piece than any sermon. Monday came heavy with chores. Michael and Janine arrived early, arms full of files. We spread everything across the dining table like a crime scene reconstructed for clarity. Utility transfers. Mortgage notices, the funeral invoice, $6,324.47. "Settle it from the estate account," Michael advised. Closes that door. Janine stapled photocopies, fast and precise. "Keep every receipt. If they come after you, we've got paper trail." I watched her work the way men watch engines, impressed by the rhythm. The clack of her stapler was oddly comforting. Then came the question that mattered: reconcile or litigate? Michael rubbed his temples. "If Samantha or her lawyers want an amicable settlement for proven household expenses, negotiate. If they threaten a claim without evidence, we litigate." He drew a diagram on his legal pad. "Think of it like wiring a circuit. Complete the loop or isolate the short. Your choice." I looked at the window, the same window I'd stared through that night in the rain, and thought about Daniel, about how he'd signed that deed in February, smiling like a man who'd finally fixed something permanent. He'd given me a tool, the law. Now I had to use it gently. "Let's negotiate the reasonable things and make them prove the rest," I said. "If they want a list, we'll give it." "But no theatrics," Michael smiled. "Smart. Paperwork solves more tempers than apologies ever will." At week's end, Frank came by with his pickup and a thermos. We sat on the back steps, watching sparrows dart around the birdhouse he'd hung for Carol years ago. "Did you see that kid live stream the whole mess?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. At least it showed the truth. "People need witnesses." Frank tapped his thermos against mine. "Your name's not in the headlines as the villain." "That's worth something." "It is," I said. "In towns like ours, reputation's as necessary as roofs. You protect it the same way, with honest work and proof." As dusk settled, I made a list. Deposit dates, paid bills, check numbers, witness names. I slipped it under my pillow like an insurance policy. The paper rustled when I turned over, steady as a heartbeat. I didn't sleep great, but I slept. And that, for then, felt like winning. The courthouse conference room looked like every other place built to contain tempers: gray carpet, buzzing lights, the faint smell of disinfectant and burnt coffee. Nothing grand. Just 4 walls where people came to rewrite the truth with paperwork. Michael adjusted his tie and leaned close. Remember, Ed, short answers, keep calm. The first man to lose his temper loses the case. I nodded. Been doing that since job sites in the 80s. Across the table sat David Wilcox and Sharon Mills, lawyers for Samantha. Between them she looked smaller than I remembered, clutching a bottle of water, eyes rimmed pink but still proud. The court reporter's recorder blinked red like a heartbeat. Deposition of Edward Thompson, she announced. April 26, 2025, 10:03 a.m. Wilcox began with a voice soaked in politeness. Mr. Thompson, you understand you're under oath? I do. You are the father of the late Daniel Thompson? Yes. And you currently occupy the residence at 614 Parkview Lane? I do, he clicked his pen. Let's discuss ownership. Go ahead. You claim sole ownership of that property? I don't claim it, I said. I hold the deed. There was a small pause. Even lawyers respect certainty. Wilcox's smile tightened. Your son was married when he executed that transfer? Correct. You realize marital property doesn't apply retroactively, I cut in. The house was mine long before their vows. He transferred it back to secure my roof. Michael gave a quiet nod. We'd rehearsed that line, but it came out honest, not memorized. Wilcox shuffled papers. Was Mrs. Thompson present? No. So you concealed the transfer? I kept private business private. That's not concealment. Mills's keyboard clattered like rain. Wilcox leaned forward. Did you pressure your son? Michael said. Objection. Assumes facts, not in evidence. Wilcox ignored him. Answer the question. I met his stare. You ever tried pressuring an electrician on payday? Doesn't work. His idea, his lawyer, his pen. Samantha's fingers twisted the label off her water bottle. For a second, her eyes softened, maybe remembering the man we'd both lost. Wilcox pressed harder. Did your daughter-in-law contribute financially? She bought groceries sometimes. I reimbursed her. For how much? $317 total. 4 years, Mills blinked. That's all? That's all. Receipts are color-coded if you'd like to verify. Michael slid the folder forward. Exhibit C, silence thickened. The fluorescent hum grew louder until you could hear your own pulse. Wilcox forced a chuckle. Surely more than that. You can check, I said. I don't exaggerate. He scribbled something. Describe your relationship with my client. Cordial, I said. Until grief got ambitious. Even the court reporter cracked a smile before she caught herself. Wilcox tried one last jab. You were aware your son texted his wife, quote, Mom needs to let go of the house thing? I was shown that text, I said. Looked to me like a man keeping peace. So this transfer was purely benevolent? No, it was practical. Daniel understood death doesn't file warnings. That stopped him cold. He glanced at Samantha, then at Michael, realizing maybe that some truths can't be cornered. We broke for lunch at noon. Michael handed me a bottle of water. You're handling him like a lineman handles voltage, steady, one wire at a time. Feels like pulling cable through rusted conduit, I said. He smiled. That's litigation. Downstairs, the courthouse cafe smelled like fryer oil and resignation. We ate soup that tasted like salt and patience. Neither of us talked for a while. Then Michael leaned in. They've got no anchor. Keep calm this afternoon. If you keep being human, they can't villainize you. I stirred my coffee. I never wanted to be a story. You already are, he said. At least make it accurate. Back upstairs after lunch, Wilcox changed tactics. Softer tone, maybe hoping sympathy would win what logic hadn't. Mr. Thompson, he said, my client would like to make a brief statement. Samantha took a breath. Daniel told me he wanted us to make that house our home. He said his dad wouldn't live forever. Michael. Objection. Hearsay. Wilcox. Overruled by agreement. She faced me fully. You never liked me, Ed. You treated me like a tenant, not family. I treated everyone by the same house rules, I said. Shoes off, lights off, honesty on. Her voice cracked. I just wanted to belong. I believe you, I said. But belonging isn't ownership. She looked down. The room went quiet enough to hear the recorder's soft whir. Wilcox coughed once and gathered his files. No further questions. Michael stood. Deposition concluded at 3:47 p.m. The reporter stopped the tape. The sound of zipping cases was the sweetest sound I'd heard all year. Outside, April wind scraped between the courthouse buildings. The sky was buffalo gray, that color of static on an old TV. Michael loosened his tie. You buried them with courtesy. Courtesy's cheaper than arrogance, I said. He smiled. That line belongs in a book. We crossed the parking lot toward his car. He said, expect withdrawal within a week. They can't afford discovery after this. Good, I said. I'm done fighting ghosts. Go do something normal, Ed. Like what? Buy better locks, he said, laughing. 3 days later, I was staring at a wall of deadbolts at Ace Hardware when someone said my name. Mr. Thompson? It was Officer Lena Torres, same calm eyes, uniform neat, coffee cup in hand. She smiled. Heard about the deposition. Word gets around. You did good. Just told the truth, I said. Truth doesn't trend much, she replied. Keep doing it. Her partner, Officer Harris, walked up holding a box of screws. We used your line in training. Staying calm's cheaper than bail. Classic. I laughed. Didn't know I was quotable. Fame finds the unwilling, Torres said. Good seeing you, Ed. They left. I picked a sturdy Schlage lock set, brass, heavy, honest. At the counter, the young cashier looked at me shyly. My dad watched that live stream, she said. Said you handled yourself with class. I nodded. Tell him thank you. Guess witnesses come in many forms now. Some wear badges, some hold phones, but they all keep score. Friday morning, the phone rang just after 8. Michael's voice carried that lawyer's half-suppressed triumph. They folded, Ed. Official withdrawal filed at 8:42 a.m. No conditions, no claims. I sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where Daniel had signed the deed 14 months ago. The light came through the blinds the same way, thin and forgiving. That's it? I asked. That's it. You own it outright. They can't appeal without evidence, and you left them none. For a long time, all I heard was the low hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the wall clock, the sound of a house breathing again. You ever get tired of cleaning up other people's messes, Michael? Part of the job, he said. But I'll tell you, rarely do I see someone handle injustice with that much discipline. You should teach a class, I laughed. On what? Patience under pressure. When we hung up, I stayed seated a while. The quiet felt heavier than noise, but gentler too. That evening, the answering machine blinked red. One new message. Ed, it's Samantha. A pause, a breath. I know it's over. I wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have changed the locks. I was angry and scared. I thought everything I built was slipping away. I played it twice. The first time my jaw clenched. The second time I just listened. To the tremor under her words, the grief trying to find its shape. Then I picked up the phone and dialed. She answered on the second ring. Hello? It's Ed. Silence, then carefully. I didn't think you'd call. I heard your message. I meant it. I took a slow breath. You made mistakes. So did I. I let silence do the talking too long. Her voice broke. Daniel loved you so much. He wanted us to be close, but I didn't know how to share him. That's not something anyone teaches, I said. I was jealous, she whispered. And when he died, I blamed you. I thought if I could control the house, I could control the grief. The honesty hurt. It deserved an honest reply. I don't hate you, Sam, but I couldn't let you erase me from my own story. I understand, she said, barely audible. I saw that video, the one from the driveway. You didn't yell. You just stood there. I looked like a stranger. We were both strangers to pain that day, I said. Nobody wins arguments with grief, she sniffed. Do you forgive me? I thought of Daniel's laugh, of Carol's patience, of the years I'd spent believing control was strength. I forgive what's fixable, I said. The rest we'll both learn to live with. Thank you. You can visit Daniel's things anytime, I added. Just call first. Come respectful. That's all I ask. I will, she said softly. When the line went dead, the house seemed to inhale, wood settling, pipes ticking. Forgiveness didn't sound dramatic. It sounded like plumbing after a thaw, ordinary and clean. Sunday morning, I drove to Holy Cross Cemetery. The snow had melted into slush. The grass shone with that early spring stubborn green. Daniel's headstone caught the light like a quiet apology. I brushed away the leaves and poured a little coffee from my thermos onto the ground. You'd laugh at all this, I said. Your dad finally learned about deeds, courts, and patience. A wind moved through the birches, soft but certain. I think she'll be all right someday, I added. Maybe we all will. On the way home, I stopped by the bakery Carol used to love and bought a loaf still warm from the oven. The clerk, a young man maybe Daniel's age, recognized me from somewhere. You're the man from the Parkview story, right? Guess so. My granddad said you reminded him of the old neighborhood, people who handled things the right way. I smiled. Tell your granddad we're still out here. Back at home, I set the new lock hardware on the counter, tools lined like soldiers. Each screw twist felt like its own redemption. When the latch finally clicked into place, it sounded like punctuation, a period, not a comma. As I cleaned up, Frank pulled into the driveway with his pickup, carrying sandwiches and 2 thermoses. Heard they dropped the case, he said. Paper trail did the heavy lifting, he laughed. So what's next for the legend of Parkview Lane? Paint the porch. Maybe regrout the tiles. Normal things. We sat on the steps, sandwiches in hand. The sky was a calm gray, the kind that promises rain without threat. Half the internet thinks you're some kind of folk hero, Frank said. Then the internet needs better heroes. Still, not bad for a man who didn't own a smartphone last year. I smiled. I only learned to text because Daniel made me. Silence settled in, the good kind. The maple tree rustled overhead, shaking loose last year's leaves. You ever gonna sell this place? Frank asked. No, not while I can climb the steps. Figured. Houses like this remember who built them. He stood, stretching his back. If you ever need help repainting, call me. Deal. When his truck disappeared down the street, I sat there a while longer, watching the porch light flicker against the coming dusk. The same house that had seen weddings, arguments, and betrayal was now just steady. It didn't feel like victory. It felt like balance. I brewed a cup of coffee in the kitchen, using the old mug Daniel gave me. World's okayest dad. Steam fogged the window. Outside, rain began to fall, soft as forgiveness. I whispered, "We're home, kid." And this time, the words didn't ache. They settled, quiet, sure, earned. The house was finally quiet again. Not empty, just quiet in the right places. You learn the difference after a war that leaves no smoke. Morning light slipped through the kitchen blinds, striping the table like a barcode of time. I poured coffee into the old world's okayest dad mug, the one Daniel gave me the Christmas before he married Samantha. There's a chip on the rim now, but it holds heat better than any new one. When you've been through loss, you start keeping imperfect things. They're honest about surviving. That week I started rebuilding my routine. Small things. Sweep the porch. Check the circuit panel. Fix the hinge on the upstairs door. After months of reacting, doing something normal felt like a miracle made of screws and muscle memory. By Thursday, I had a new lock on the front door, a fresh coat of paint on the railing, and something else I hadn't felt in years, appetite. I cooked eggs the way Daniel liked them, over easy, butter too much, pepper too generous. I ate standing by the sink, like a man who'd just remembered what hunger meant. On Friday morning, a silver sedan pulled into the driveway. I thought it was Frank coming early for coffee, but when the door opened, it was Samantha. She stepped out carefully, holding a small cardboard box. Her face looked pale but different, less armor, more regret. I opened the door before she could knock. "Morning," I said. She hesitated. "Can I come in?" "I changed the locks," I said softly. "But not the rules." "Respect, calm, and truth," she nodded. "That's fair." Inside, she looked around like someone visiting a museum where every exhibit used to breathe. "You fixed the railing." "I fix things," I said. "It's what I do." She placed the box on the table and opened it. Inside were photographs. Daniel as a kid at the wedding, laughing on the beach in South Carolina. "I found these when I moved," she said. "They belong here." I ran a thumb along the edge of one photo, Daniel holding a toolbox, grinning, grease on his face. "He'd hate seeing us like we were," I said. "I know," she looked around. "It smells like coffee and paint. It used to smell like lemon cleaner." "Change is a good scent if it's earned," I said. She sat down, hands clasped like she was holding something fragile. I started seeing someone, a counselor. She said guilt's like carrying bricks you never stacked. You just inherit the weight, I nodded. She's right. I didn't just take your home, she said quietly. I took your peace, and I don't know how to give it back. You just did, I said. By saying that out loud, her eyes filled but didn't spill. I wish I'd known how to talk like this before everything went bad. Pain teaches grammar, I said. Most of us are slow learners. We sat in silence for a while. Outside, a snowplow rumbled past. April in Buffalo never quite decides if it's winter or spring. Before she left, she reached into her purse and pulled out a folded check. For the damages, the locks, the lawyer, it's not much, but I raised a hand. Keep it. Use it for your own start, she blinked. Why? Because justice isn't revenge, I said. It's correction. And we're corrected now. She nodded, left the box on the table and stepped out. The sound of her car fading down Parkview Lane felt like a book finally closing on its last page. That night I couldn't sleep. I took out the old spiral notebook Carol had once used for grocery lists and started writing. At first it was just lines. What happened? When? Who said what? Then it became something else. Reflections, lessons, warnings. I wrote, people think betrayal comes loud. It doesn't. It comes in whispers, in signatures, in new locks. It walks like politeness and talks like logic. But truth stands quiet until someone opens the file. I paused, then added, if you want to know someone's character, watch how they act when paperwork proves them wrong. By midnight, I'd filled 20 pages. Writing didn't fix anything, but it organized the ruins. A week later, Frank called. Hey, the hardware store's sponsoring a community repair day. You should come teach wiring basics. Folks need it. I'm retired, I said. Retired doesn't mean rusted, he said. He was right. Saturday morning, I showed up at the community center with my toolbox and an old flannel shirt. About a dozen people came. Kids, a couple single moms, one guy who said his landlord never fixed anything right. We set up long tables with outlets and cords. I showed them how to strip wire safely, twist connections, and tape joints neat. A teenage boy with shaggy hair asked, You really built your own house? With these two hands, I said. And a lot of mistakes, he grinned. My dad just swears when stuff breaks. Then you'll do better, I said. By noon, the room smelled of sawdust and effort. Frank handed out sandwiches. Look at this, he said. You turned grief into a workshop. Maybe grief's just another kind of current, I said. You can shock yourself or you can light something. He laughed. You should trademark that. 2 days later, a knock came at the door. A woman in a gray coat, notepad in hand. Mr. Thompson? I'm Claire Reynolds, local feature writer. I'm doing a follow-up piece on the Parkview story. I sighed. That thing's still news? It's not about the incident, she said. It's about what you did after. The classes, the neighbors, the forgiveness. People like stories with endings. Then make sure you tell it right, I said. May I record? Go ahead, she clicked the recorder. Why didn't you press charges after the lockout? Because some lessons cost less when you stop counting. She smiled faintly. And you let her keep the settlement check? Justice doesn't need trophies, I said. Her next question softened. Do you miss your son? Every day, I said. But missing doesn't mean I'm stuck. He taught me how to wire circuits. Now I just wire people back to themselves. She wrote it down, nodded. That's good. May I quote you? Only if you spell my name right. When she left, the sun broke through the clouds. I stood in the doorway, feeling its warmth through the glass. For the first time since that night in the rain, the house didn't feel like a fortress. It felt like a story told properly, one with an honest ending still being written. When you tell your story enough, it stops being raw and starts to mean something else. That's what Claire said when she left, that my small actions were a story people could follow toward doing better. I didn't think I was being heroic. I was just being boringly practical. Fixing a hinge, writing things down, answering questions honestly. Saturday turned into a string of small rituals. I mowed a neighbor's lawn in exchange for a pie. I checked attic wiring for an elderly widow 2 streets over. I taught another class at the community center. How to spot a grounded outlet, when to call a pro, how not to electrocute yourself changing a fixture. The kids liked the soldering lesson the least, and the most at the same time. On a Wednesday afternoon, Michael stopped by with a folder and a paper coffee cup. He sank into the chair like a man who'd finished a marathon in a suit. "How are you holding up?" "Like a house after a storm," I said. "A bit crooked, but standing," he nodded. "Official notice is on file. The county clerk stamped everything. You might want to set up an estate plan now. Make sure the paperwork you needed exists for the next generation." I thought of Daniel's grin when he hid tools under the Christmas tree. "You'll help me. I'll draft it," he said. "Simple and clear. Trust, clauses, the works. It's what your son wanted." That night I called Father O'Leary from the parish. "Father, would you come by? I'm thinking of putting a bench under the pear tree and a small dedication." "I'll be there," he said. "Bring the thermos." When he arrived, he wore his coat despite the warmth. He read a short blessing, the kind that doesn't fix concrete but steadies a heart. We hammered the plaque onto the bench together. It read simply, "For Daniel, who loved tools, stories, and us." I pressed the plaque with my palm like a father sealing a promise. Friends and neighbors showed up with small offerings, a planter from Mrs. Calhoun, a ribbon from the PTA, a bouquet from Lydia. One of my adult ed students, Samantha, came too with an armful of daffodils. She tucked them into the planter, her hands trembling but sure. "Ed," she said quietly, "thank you for letting me come." "You did the hard part," I said. "You showed up." She sat on the bench for a long time, tracing the grain of the wood. She didn't say much, but her presence felt like a stitch added where fabric had once torn. The rest of the afternoon was ordinary and perfect in a way courthouses can't imitate. Kids chased a soccer ball across the yard. Frank fixed the porch light. A neighbor asked if I knew any electricians. I told him I knew one who taught classes on Saturdays. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table with my spiral notebook. The 20 pages I'd written before had become 40. I read them aloud, not because anyone needed to hear, but because speaking arranges memory into sentences. The words landed clean. Why dignity counts. Why paperwork sometimes protects what love tries to preserve, and why quietness is a kind of resistance. A week later, Claire's piece ran with a headline that made me uncomfortable, Parkview's quiet hero, but the story was fair. She quoted me, "Dignity is maintenance." She wrote about the classes, the bench, and the way the neighborhood had learned a new tone. The coverage brought calls from old students, a parish member who wanted a volunteer wiring clinic, a high schooler asking if I'd mentor their electronics club. The calls mattered less than the steadiness they brought. On a cold Friday, I met with Carla Nguyen from the insurance office. We adjusted coverage, added a property rider, and confirmed the beneficiaries. The premium dropped $47 a month. She laughed when I told her about the live stream. "You handled it the right way," she said. "Paperwork and patience, who knew?" "Old habits," I said. When spring finally arrived in full, I invited a few people for a memorial dinner. We ate roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and Frank's pie, the same one he'd brought the week I changed the locks. We shared stories, Daniel's terrible puns, the time he wired the kitchen outlet to the porch light by accident. Lydia read an excerpt from a story she'd written about fixing a broken lamp and saving a marriage. Her voice trembled in the right places. At the end of the night, I stood and raised my cup. "To Daniel," I said, "for teaching us to hold on and reminding us what matters." They lifted their cups. The kitchen hummed, not loud, not forced, steady as a heartbeat. Before bed, I wrote one last line in the spiral. Keep receipts. Keep promises. Keep showing up. I underlined it twice. People ask now if I feel vindicated, if the legal fight was worth it, if I learned anything. The answer is yes, but not for the reasons headlines like. I learned that dignity isn't anger. It's quiet work, filing, calling, showing up, sometimes making tea for someone you don't understand yet. It's keeping your hands busy with tools and words until the rawness becomes something you can hold without bleeding. The pear tree is blooming. The bench reads the light. The house creaks at night like the chest of a man who's finally breathing right. When people ask what to do when the world tries to take what they love, I tell them what Dan, Carol, and Daniel all taught me. Prepare the paperwork. Love the people and do the boring work of dignity. It's not glamorous. It's not quick. But it's how you keep a house from becoming a story someone else tells. When I leave the porch light on at night now, it isn't to ward off thieves or sorrow. It's because I like the way the light looks on the plaque, a square of proof that someone loved us well enough to write it down.